Forbes India presents Reimagining Enterprises with Data Cloud, partnered with Snowflake.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Forbes India presents Reimagining Enterprises with Data Cloud, powered by Snowflake. I'm Mugdha Kalra. What does it mean to be data-driven in today's day and age? The definitions have all changed. Data just doesn't inform and guide in decision-making processes, but is optimizing operations, improving products, integrating services, and identifying new opportunities. The combination of artificial intelligence and cloud computing, or the AI cloud, is an emerging concept in enterprise software architecture. It addresses the current demands and challenges of storing and processing high-volume data, building and running algorithms in the cloud, and integrating advanced machine learning services. But what does it mean to be a data-driven enterprise? Joining me today to talk about that and how to supercharge your enterprise with data, please welcome to the forum Vimal Venkatram, MD Snowflake India, Dinesh Gangwani, CTO Mahindra Finance, Sriram Naganathan, CTO HDFC Ergo, Ramesh Padala, CTO Reliance Retail, and Vijay Kannan, Global Head Business Transformation and CDO Godrej Consumer Products. Welcome, gentlemen. May I first start with you, Vijay? Rapidly accelerating technology advances, data-driven enterprises, all of these are words. We love the phrase data-driven. What does it mean actually for enterprises, and what has your experience been?
I think we sometimes overhype the word data and what can organizations do with data, right? So for me, in its core, it's fundamentally making sure that we're able to make better decisions, more efficient and more effective decisions by taking into account the information that's available to us. And over the past many years, I think as technology has evolved, we've been able to capture a multitude of data sets across various different, you mentioned, operations or processes that organizations have. But unfortunately, we've not been able to either capture it or then effectively put to use by converting data to information to insights. I think the advent of technology has really unlocked the power that organizations can then unleash behind getting to these insights. And that's the journey and transformation that you're seeing going on in the industries now.
I would want to talk more about data security and how data is read and how much is too much data and all of that. So I'll come back with you on that. But Dinesh, if I may come to you, what are the biggest advantages of implementing data and then AI in decision making, and what has been the Mahindra experience?
So I'll take a cue from what my colleague said here, Vijay. So there's a lot of information out there, right? I think so. The key that we've observed is that we are all gunning for the same set of customers. So one of the things that data really helps, and it's not only us, but I think so every organization has experienced is that you can actually, on the customer experience, give a more stronger focus. What I mean by that is that, we all heard the buzzword hyper-personalized, right? Now, if you look at data and you look at AI, what it can do to you, you can actually decide what the customer needs to be pinged for. So that's one area that we've really seen advantages of. The second we've seen is genuinely look at, our operating costs and see how we can lower them. Now, when I say by that, doesn't mean that you take a mundane task and said, I've used AI to do it. There's a lot of collateral information that we collect, right? Gone are the days wherein you had a boring document management system, right? So you apply the concept of AI and you can do wonders with it. The third, what we've really seen from an advantage is that it actually, from a decisioning perspective, because we are finance, right? While I would say there's a lot of physical touch still required, given that, our customers will be, I would say, a little apprehensive if we say everything is being done by a bot, but it acts as a very strong enabler for us, right? Because tomorrow, if you're an underwriter and you get a scorecard which has information which you couldn't have seen because of the ream of information that we have, today, AI is making that available at a fingertips. So at a broad level, these three. Having said that, there's lots happening. So, there's lots happened in terms of what you can prescribe and get early warning signals on. So I would end here saying that AI is definitely helping. It's not yet there, but it's become a strong enabler.
Sriram, BFSI sector, how are you seeing some of the trends change from the past when we talk about data and data consumption, and what are some of the use cases that you are seeing at HDFC ERGO?
Well, thanks, Mugdha. I think I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I would kind of talk about this in three specific areas. Clearly, the first is around distribution and sales. Actually, the regulator has kind of taken the lead here. Of late, the regulator has been talking about insurance for all by 2047. That's kind of really put us on a fast trajectory. All the insurers in India are kind of really trying to gear up for meeting up with this, and no better way than actually deep mining data and ensuring we get to address this big issue. And by the way, we are hardly scratching the surface. We have a long way to traverse. So deep mining data and ensuring we have the right kind of products for the right kind of people. I think that's the real challenge that we are doing. So that's on the distribution front. Clearly, we as HDFC ERGO, we are we have been working on this pretty seriously for the last few years. Crop insurance is a big play for us, and here we actually use a lot of data and artificial intelligence to kind of cater to this particular segment. Second, coming to operational efficiency, I think we actually belong to an industry that really is not seeing big margins here. So for us, every penny saved is really contributing in a big way to the bottom line. So how do we kind of digitize our processes, ensure everything is straight through and smooth to the extent possible? I think that's a real focus area for us, and that's again where looking into our data. I like the way he put it. We've all studied about this. Data moving to information and then to insights or intelligence. But now is when actually because of the cloud and because of the various tools which have come in, we are really getting into the intelligence era, I would say. So that is really contributing to seeing how can we optimize our process. And the third one is clearly around customer experience, and that's where again data can be a big differentiator for insurers like us. Obviously getting the bulk of the processing load into an automated processing really frees up our folks to kind of really cater to the customer by being emotional, having that emotional connect with the customer. That for us again is the very big takeaway, and which is where a lot of focus is on.
Right. Dinesh, Ramesh, I want to put this to you. When we talk about Reliance and we talk about Reliance Retail and we then talk about data, and when we are looking at numbers and how they are being used to understand what the customers like, how the product needs to be changed, what are the services looking like, what is the retail experience there?
Yeah, so retail is more or less quite simple. You buy, you move, sell, and then you serve, right? So 4 big segments. And Reliance plays a big role in all 4 of these, right? And for us, it's an ecosystem play. So it's just not Reliance, right? Because we buy vegetables and fruit from farmers. We buy clothes from manufacturers. We buy your saboons and stuff from FMCG companies. So pretty big ecosystem of consumers and producers. So we've been leveraging data to bring all of this together, right? So I'll take a few examples. Anecdotally, I think from a consumer experience perspective, there has been personalization, hyper-personalization, and all those things, right? Which we're all pretty used to. But now we are moving to the next stage of, for example, you want to buy like a shirt, or you want to buy lipstick, right? And mostly, you're sitting in Bombay where there's a lot of traffic. You don't want to really travel. How do you make that experience happen while you are at home? Or you go into a store. For example, we have new stores called Azort stores. We have 1 in Bangalore, 2 in Bombay right now, which are next generation clothing stores where you walk in and you can. There's a virtual trial room. And then, so for example, you're trying a shirt, it knows, it's Mugdha, she wears whatever size, this is the colors that you like. And people like you have purchased these other items. It actually has a screen inside that shows other options. you can say, you don't need to walk out of the trial room. You say, hey, can you get me these? Then a guy or a girl will come and bring those things to you. So these are
Wow.
like, this is not the future, right? This is like live right now. In terms of obviously supply chain in moving things, AI data has been used for many, many years. But again, taking fashion and lifestyle as a business, gone are the days when we used to do like 3 cycles of buying and selling, right? Like now it's really like hyper seasonal, like fashions change, like right now it's mom jeans or whatever, right? In 2 weeks it might change, like a fashion in Bandra might not be playing out in Aurangabad. True. Right? And since we also have a handle of the ecosystem, we tend to also, we are looking at ways of how do we get from fabric to home, actually from cotton to fabric to home, and marry it with the styles that are popular in that area. So that's I think the future.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And before I put any more questions, I won't come to Vimal, but I want to know all the addresses of the Bombay, the Bombay outlets where I can go, because this sounds really fascinating. All right, Vimal, coming to you. Data-driven enterprise seems to be like the buzzword. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants to be called that. What is driving all organizations towards this? It's a rhetoric question, but it has layers to it. And is everyone prepared for it?
Fantastic question. First up, the insights the panelists have shared is awesome, right from experiences, fashion trends, focusing on cost and margins and efficiencies and the entire distribution channels as well. Every organization today needs to be data-driven if they're not, right? And we're not just talking the private sector. I was in Delhi a couple of weeks ago to listen to the Minister for Railways, and he spoke about building India with bricks and clicks. Bricks from a infrastructure growth standpoint, and also really transforming the digital economy with clicks. And the entire underlying clicks transformation is with data.
Correct.
At the government of India level, things like UPI and things like that. And every organization, like I said, whether private sector or the government or even public sector, looks at data as an asset today. And if they're not, they should be looking at data as an asset. What can we do more with data? And the whole idea of data is, can we make data an asset where I can possibly offer new products and services, really impacting revenue? Can I reduce cost, for example? Can I make data distribution, or in our world we call data sharing, a lot more efficient in the way we really share data with our customers, our internal business units, or even partners? And finally, can I improve the efficiency and reduce risk? Security is a big concern for so many enterprises today.
True.
And everyone spoke about the vast volumes of data. When I started in the data industry, we were talking terabytes was very large. Today, petabytes seems okay, exabytes, and people are talking about really vast volumes of data. The entire aspect of security and governance is equally as important to maintain when you start seeing data growing at this scale. And it's exactly where we sort of come in, where we make it super easy for customers to have that data-driven strategy within the organization. And one of the key things we keep talking about is the time to value. Gone are the days where you can afford to do 24-month sort of projects, hope that some return comes in as well. Can we offer quick wins? Can we really bring an organization a lot of value in the shortest possible of time, moving projects from years to sort of weeks and days?
All right. So you mentioned about data security and the challenge of also reading the data and data mining and deep mining, as you were talking about. But when we try to deep dive into data and the data that we are collecting, Vijay, what is your experience then? As I said, what data to be used, how to be used, how it is to be leveraged, use of AI in your industry specifically. People may have a tendency of getting lost with that data as well, or how to read that data as well. What are then some of the practices that should be followed?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I'll probably pick off from what Vimal mentioned, right, in terms of, so if you look at the life cycle of how do you create an organization that is data driven, it's a bit different from how you set up transactional core processes, where you spend a lot of time in trying to figure out what is the process the organization needs, and then you implement and drive it for resilience and consistency. Whereas from a data standpoint, it needs to be the complete opposite, where you would need to start small. And you need to start with hypothesis and problem solving, because you're going to get value from data only by picking the curiosity and problem solving mindset of folks within the organization, right? So you need to start small. For example, in our case, let's say if you're looking at forecasting of demand. So what's going to be the customer offtake of our products in the market? So you will start with a particular data set, right? And you will then start put some hypothesis on it. And you would start to apply AI, machine learning, various different techniques that are available to then start validating those hypotheses to see, is it getting us to the value point that we want to get to? Some of it would work, some of it won't, because data and value from data is all about experimentation. So then you need to be able to quickly scale and be flexible in your ecosystem of the, be it the data warehouse or the kind of ETL layer that you would need to pull the data in, to then start churning out new data sets and new hypotheses to get to better outcomes. So for example, in forecasting, you might start with just sales data, but then you might want to overlay promotions, you might want to overlay pricing, you might want to overlay weather, you might want to overlay GDP, macroeconomic factors. There are many things that can keep progressively, potentially adding value to data and outcomes, but you need to take it step by step.
When we talk about data architecture, Dinesh, how do you fuel digital acceleration using the right kind of system parameters, and how that has to be customized to the company? And if we could get your particular example from Mahindra Finance.
So again, thanks to Vijay, he's giving me all the ideas. Okay, so what he said, you start with a small cohort of data. So, when we look at architecture, we first said, we just need simple data, right? And we just need analytics. That's the easiest part. That's the most descriptive form of data. And Vimal, I'm going to start using some jargons that Vimal will smile on, right? Then you'll move to data which was in the past. What we say is, very old diagnostic data. So you need to understand how much of that data do you have. Do you have it, or do you have to generate it, synthetic data? So you have to start looking at that. Then you think of, maybe I'll start predicting something, which we in our finance world says early warning signals. Or you start giving us some, some alerts. Then my gentleman on fashion said they've gone to the next level, wherein they're not only predicting, but they're actually being prescriptive depending on where you land up, right? And they're curating the data to your needs, right? And then now there is another wave which takes all of this and decides at what point what needs to be served to you. Now, if I put all of this, imagine the data architecture, right? So people have created data warehouses, people have created data marts, data lakes. Many years back, I learned about mesh architectures. That was a pretty nascent stage, but now it's something that we all need, right? And what is that jargon means? Simple. I don't need to put data somewhere in a central place to allow somebody else to subscribe to it. Can I take data at source, actually create a service, what we call the acronym API, what we say, and give the data on the other side? So I feel the industry is now there. It wasn't there many years back, because we realized that we can create it, but our consumers can't consume it. So when we look at architecture, to your original question, we'll have to look at all of these and see what is applicable for the organization and then build it. So my summary is, there may not be a formula to it, but there are these, the tech is there. It depends on what needs your business needs, and then I would say align your architecture to that. But it has to evolve, because businesses are evolving.
Sriram, if I could get you in, data on cloud strategy, what has your approach been towards that?
So our approach is, we have kind of tried to approach it from both ends, burning the candle from both ends, if I can call it that. So one, I think all of them talked about, how do we show value? And that's where, you take these small use cases. We've kind of done a bit of that as well. But, this needs a cultural change. While, the tech teams are kind of, very gung-ho about all the new technologies coming in, it does give them a platform where they can deliver value much faster, but it also needs the business to kind of think data. So it's also that culture which has to kind of change. to get into that inquisitive mindset of asking those right questions. Because if you don't have the right question, you don't have the right answer. So we have focused on the use cases at the top. If I have to talk about insurance, there is something called as a nudge engine that we have trying to build. I think most of us would have done it in our respective industries. But how can we use a nudge to make a sales guy, or an agent on the field more productive? To a customer, for example, how do you nudge him to kind of say that he is insured to the right extent where he should be. So those kind of things we have done. But I think it's also got to go to the bottom where we have so much of data. There is a very, very pertinent need for focusing on data quality.
Correct.
So having data governance in place, ensuring that we have insurance, for example, I have to talk about it. KYC, which was there in most industries. At least for general insurance, it just got launched, from the 1st of Jan. So we have a lot of suspect data. So it's very important to kind of, clean up that data.
Right.
Because until that part is cleaned, some of the inferences can go awfully wrong. So we are kind of doing both. Data governance for me is also a very important thing. So the cultural aspect, data governance, I think are as important as some of the, more flashy use cases that we are developing.
Right. Vimal, that is what brings me to a larger question, which is what are the classic mistakes that people make? Or what are the challenges that they face when they are trying to leverage their data, but at the same time, if the governance is missing or the analysis is missing or the budgets are everywhere. So, but summing it up, but what are some of the classic challenges that young companies face, even at the middle level they face? So if you could elaborate.
Great question,
on that.
and a lot of insights which I can draw on from as well. So let's take culture. Now culture is extremely important for any data transformation within any organization. Young, sort of mid-stage or even very old and matured organizations as well. If data transformation or any kind of transformation is not really led from, let's say, the board, CEO or CFO level, it's going to be like a band-aid, for example. You're not going to really achieve very large-scale transformation in the org. So a lot of customers, in my experience that I've seen, don't really do this from the board level or the CEO or the CFO level. It's typically done at, let's say, one small business unit and hope that that percolates in the org. It's very rarely very rarely happens. The second, the intent to change, once it's coming from the top, you're looking at what are the technology platforms available for me today in order for me to achieve, let's say, a quick time to value, a hypothesis which I can sort of go and try and test. Here is where cloud adoption becomes super easy. You don't have to do really complex things like maintaining a data warehouse on your own data center. You can simply provision it, test anything that you want, get the value, and move to the next larger use case. So use of cloud computing, or Snowflake on cloud as well is extremely cost effective because you can quickly test things out. The third, once it gets into a really complex way where you have many use cases in the organization, you really want to set up a governance framework. You really want all your data, whether it's terabytes or petabytes like we spoke about, in a single source of truth. You don't want data to be in different disparate data silos. That's another common theme, and I won't call it a mistake. A lot of people don't get the advantages of the centralized architecture very easily. The young, modern, born in cloud, digital native companies do, but some of the older organizations still need a little bit of more education around that. But that data, when it's in a single source of truth, can be an extremely valuable asset, because you're not really creating different data marts for one organization. Let's say marketing has one data mart or finance has one data mart. Everyone looks at one copy of data. Every organization or every BU makes decisions on a single source of truth. And that is extremely important, because once data is in a single source of truth, I can now, let's say, run AI models on that. I can run machine learning algorithms on the entire data set. And that is rich, valuable information at that point in time.
What are the challenges in the sector of finance?
So I think some of that my colleagues have called out, but I would actually pivot on saying, is the organization ready to use the data the way we've actually massaged it or shown it, right? So I just came out of a meeting on an example wherein we've created a lot of outcome-based dashboards, but we realized that not all of them are getting consumed, right? So over time, you have to evolve just because we've given an outcome-based data dashboard or we've done some cool analytics on it, it doesn't stop there. You have to. So we spoke about agility, right? So I would say one challenge is how do you even make your data agile, right? If I have to join the two concepts, and that's very important because, I'll give another example. Recently, we saw some data depending on, our customer segmentation. But we realized that just because there is some change in policies, now the data is as good as what the customer persona is. So we realized that we have to now rejig everything. And to Vimal's point, we have to make that decision really quickly. So now if you have to think at scale, right, how do you move that Titanic really quickly, right? And you change the data, and you give the insight, and you show the outcome, right? So I think so I articulated it. So if I have to look at all of this, what differentiates or will make us different is how strong the plinth is, right? How is your Lego of data actually arranged so that depending on how the new product is launched or the new data sets that have come in, how can you actually correlate that with a larger data set, what he calls as a single source of truth, so that it just gets added and you start getting additional insights, or you've got collateral or additional value of data that can surely tie up to the original source. So if you're able to do that in a seamless manner, some of the challenges can be mitigated.
Retail is a different ballgame altogether. I always say that because the subset is so different, and the habits are so different, and the data that is generated can be interpreted and read in so many different ways. What are the classic challenges then retail industry faces when it comes to overall data management?
Well, I think also retail has evolved over many years. So one of the big challenges that we have is the original whatever infrastructure was built maybe like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, right? And then over the years, multiple formats have opened up and multiple acquisitions have happened, right? So each of some of these companies are cutting edge, modern, working on Kafka or whatever, right? Some of us are on SAP, Oracle, older databases and stuff. So bridging the gap between these from a technical perspective is quite difficult. And also you want to create this single source of truth. For example, for inventory, right? Like, so for example, you went to agio.com and bought a shirt, that should be immediately removed from the inventory at a distribution center somewhere, right? Or from a local store. It's easier said than done because they're all on different systems.
Right.
Some of them on SAP, some of them are on maybe like a MongoDB or whatever it is, right? So technically, it's a very difficult proposition.
Vijay, what is the cost of agility? Because I mean, I always wonder about that. But
yeah, it's a fine balance, right? It's as some of the others mentioned, there is the importance of making sure that the iceberg that's below the water, which is not really seen by the end user community, is robust enough to, maybe iceberg is a incorrect example because it is negative connotations, but you need to make sure that the house that's not seen behind the curtain is good enough and flexible enough for you to then start creating the agility in the hands of the users. So that still needs some structured thinking, data cataloging, data design, data governance, so all of the good things that my colleague spoke about is extremely important. But one should then find the balance between how do you want to construct that in a progressive fashion without over-engineering it while making sure the house that's visible to the external world is flexible and agile enough. So again, going back to our example, I think if you look at our different data ecosystems that we've built, there are some foundations that's non-negotiable, like product master hierarchy or customer master hierarchy. So some of those master sets, we have been going through the process of ensuring that it's consistent across the different operating entities across GCPL, but then doing it in a progressive manner where we don't take all at once and you do, say, slices from a product, vendor, customer, and then you go into other master sets and then subsequently start building the core of the house, so as to say.
I want to talk about data security, but I also have tons of questions now. So let me start taking those. All right. The first question is, when data is in transit during the migration phase, there's often a risk of attacks. Oh, chalo, data security has come in. What we can do to ensure data security in such a case? Arnav Anand is asking that. Who would want to take it?
I can take it as well.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
We'll start with you,
give a
Vimal,
tech
and then we can come to Vijay.
lens to it, and then we
Absolutely.
can
I mean,
do a
look, data
practice.
security is extremely important, right? And any, whether it's a migration or running it in production as well, the one thing everyone talks about, whether it's a retail customer, financial services, government, anyone, security is at the heart of every conversation. You're looking for technology stacks where, whether it's data governance, cataloging, anything, you're looking at the end-to-end, sort of data flow. You need that to be encrypted, obviously. You need encryption on the fly. You need encryption at rest as well, by default. And that's the basic of data coming in an encrypted format and remaining in an encrypted format. The second, you're looking at, if, for example, you're dealing with PII data, and with all the regulations in place, whether, you're talking GDPR in Europe and you're talking about the new acts coming into India, you're looking at how do I now secure that data where people who should not have access to, personally identifiable information, what can they do to mask that data? So things like dynamic data masking, and that's where, Snowflake offers, for example, incredible security, where some of the largest banks, financial services companies, both, globally and in India, have adopted us at scale, because security is paramount. This is something where, if you're doing a migration project, for example, you look at how do I secure the end-to-end data flow and ensure that no matter how many use cases you onboard, that security at the heart of it doesn't change.
Vijay?
Yeah, I think he covered most of the text of this. Just one additional element I'll add, maybe not in context of data migration, but as you start looking at acquiring data, the first question to ask is the data required, especially when it comes to PII data. We might have the natural inclination to say, my storage cost has gone down dramatically, so let me just acquire. But then you are unconsciously adding a lot of data risk to the organization by acquiring data which you never know when you're going to use.
Right.
So as long as you have the ability to acquire, but not really jumping the gun to acquire, I think that call also becomes extremely important in managing broader data security.
Also, data breach can cost you a lot. So, yeah.
If I might just add to his point, many times we kind of look at data security from a compliance perspective.
Right.
I think there's also need for all of our industries to kind of look at it from a sensitivity perspective. We don't necessarily need a CDP, or the government to kind of define that, PII needs to be secured. It's also about, making the customer feel comfortable, dealing with the enterprise. And that's going back to the question about, data in transit. In our company, we have something called as, we are trying to, this is a mantra we use, we are trying to move from, market share to a mind share kind of a thing. How do you capture the mind share of a customer? For that, you need to kind of, give that comfort to a customer that you're not on his face, trying to sell something that he doesn't want, or, trying to push a service that he is not really needing. So it's also about that sensitivity. If you kind of look at it from that perspective, I think security often, tends to fall in place.
All right. So now we have another question from P. Chatterjee. How testing, automation and quality assurance of your applications are important for HDFC Ergo? So the question is for you.
I mean, these are pretty much the bread and butter for, any application, any industry, that we work in. So clearly, your value that you get onto the, surface is really, going down to the basics that he's just talked about. You have to ensure that, stuff that we build goes through adequate testing, adequate quality assurance. Now, this is where, somewhere, interpretations of agile, for example, come into place. And, it's just that, when we talk about agile, we say, things start getting delivered in 3 months. It's again, agile is not just about, a way of working. It's not about running scrums and, about the way we build stuff. Yeah, there is a certain ethos to it, how you go about doing agile. Many times I find that, agile is misinterpreted as, cutting down on the basics. The least of all should be on quality. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's something that we need to, I mean, we can't stress it more actually. And, you know, I remember many of us when we had started our careers, you know, there was a certain percentage of effort that would go into, you know, every aspect of build, if I can call it that. I don't want to use the SDLC jargon here, but, you know, we always used to, we were taught to say that, you know, you always factor enough time, at least a third of your effort should go into your testing. So, it's that important, and I don't feel that concept is still moved away.
वही मैं तभी बोल रही थी, cost of agility is an important subject to handle.
No, but I would just support him in saying that,
Yeah,
see,
Dinesh.
the fact that when you're getting agile, actually today the practices make you do more testing, whether you like it or you don't. Because if you're running it in those smaller packets, you're actually testing smaller packets. And then when you are ready with an epic, is what you typically do, you end up testing that as well.
Right.
So actually the iterations that you go through in terms of testing very early are actually supportive of what the manifesto tells you to do. But you don't need to take it literally. You can always do a quasi, right? So to your point of cost of agility, you don't need to follow it verbatim.
Right.
But actually when we ended up doing it, we realized we're spending too much time in testing, which was actually a good thing because the final product was more, I would say, aligned to what the requirements were, and hence you delivered a happy customer.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, just to add to that, you know, it's also got to do with product ownership, right? And product ownership is all about, you know, having the product owner involved through the life cycle and
Absolutely.
ensuring, you know, it gets tested enough.
Now you have data owners.
Of course, and we're building a phenomenal data product as well.
All right.
Actually, I just wanted to add one thing in quality of data itself. I'm sure the question was not about that, but I think it's a very important aspect.
Right.
You know, when you get data, what is the fidelity of the data? Because if it's junk in, junk out. So it's very important to have those kind of filters so that, you know, whenever you get data, you're filtering it and making sure it is still valid.
All right, Debolina Gupta has a question. Do you think we would hit a ceiling in the finance or insurance sector with hyper-personalization using data and AI? Gentlemen.
No, so I don't think so we'll hit a ceiling. I mean, we had on this forum saying that we've actually now moving to another level. So I would not say data and AI only enables hyper-personalization. There's a lot more to it. So first of all, I don't believe that we'll hit a ceiling. Secondly, I think so it has just made us aware that, you know, our customers can come, you know, in various forms from various channels. So there is only going to be more. Like, sorry, we were all laughing about ChatGPT. So I don't think so, you know, there is going to be any ceiling. Now with ChatGPT and everything else around it that is competing with it, I feel there's only more to it.
One of the CIOs I met in a forum said hyper-personalization for him was a segment of one.
One, exactly.
So till the time it gets into that level of hyper-personalization, the game's never over.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I'm not
Yeah,
from the finance sector, but I think the concept is equally applicable across. And as you keep evolving on the maturity curve, your goalposts also change. And I think you mentioned moving from, let's say, market share to mind share. So you might personalize, and that's not about conversion. It's about what is the quality of conversion, what kind of sentiment do you leave the user with when you make that engagement. So there are many facets to hyper-personalization that will start coming in. So the ceiling in itself kind of resets to a higher level.
Ramesh, you want to chime in on retail and hyper-personalization and who is?
Yeah, I mean, see, forget about retail. Even if I take myself, for example, right? I go to an HDFC or I go to Mahindra Finance or anything. I still feel like there is a lot to be done, right? And I think that itself is a testimony.
And, you know, if you just look at data points, penetration levels, for example, compared to any of the mature markets, the global markets, we are nowhere near, you know, reaching the ceiling. I think
in fact, I wanted to speak to you about that as well, which is that, you know, what are some of the trends that you see internationally or in your industry which definitely should make their way in India, in the industries here?
I think to his point, you know, personalization, we are talking about hyper-personalization, but we are still a very young industry in terms of there is only, you know, a standard set of products available. You have to literally force fit yourself into the product construct that's available. So, even starting from there, how do you kind of create, and again, this is breaking down the product construct into, smaller pieces, micro insurance as we'd call it, and then, kind of making it personalized, to the, so for example, we've seen examples where, if you're nearing an airport, you start getting nudges that, we see that you're going to travel, do you want to buy travel insurance? But even within travel insurance, there could be, micro segments within that.
Right.
So, you can kind of really segment and say, this is something that you might want, maybe you are going for a sport event and this is the kind of cover that you need. So, there is still a lot of that, starting from products right up to, servicing, for example, using of channels where the customer is comfortable being in. We all take pride in building portals and mobile apps, but, being on the platform of the customer's choice. So, how do you do that? And how do you then get the personalization element into it? Right. So, these are all things we are investing heavily in WhatsApp, for example, co-innovating a lot of stuff with Meta. We are trying to create all of these experiences in the platform of the customer's choice. So, those are the tweaks that we need to see, coming in. There's still a long way to go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be a little philosophical and meta about it. So, at the end of the day, each of us is a snowflake. We are all unique and different, right? So,
well planned.
So, we go through, each of us, there are 6 billion, 7 billion people, but everyone has a unique journey. At any point of time, and time it keeps going on, right? So, we all are having unique experiences as we go. So, there's no end to it.
Right. Vimal, if I can get you in on this particular question, which is that, what are some of the trends that you are seeing, which you think in your industry should come, and what is Snowflake doing in that area?
I'll actually twist the context a little bit. I've seen incredible use cases from India being exported outside. I've seen Southeast Asia, I've seen Asia Pacific and Japan. There are customers in India who've adopted Snowflake at a scale where we never thought was possible. While our founders were incredible, they designed Snowflake to have a certain use case or certain go-to-market. There are customers in India who taught us that Snowflake could be adopted in ways which we had never seen globally. Things what Swiggy is doing, for example, with Snowflake is incredible. Moving riders from low demand areas to high demand areas in near real time is all running in the backend on Snowflake today. And they're doing some wonderful work with data. And again, not just from a Snowflake standpoint, but data as an ecosystem. The kind of work Swiggy is doing today, with an array of data scientists and incredible technology is a global, phenomenon for me. And a lot of companies globally would really be well served if they can come to India and look at the use cases. Because I've heard a lot of people say, hey, I need scale to really start showcasing value. Where else will you get scale like India? Especially in a business to consumer product, where India has scale, India has got phenomenal talent. Now with the advent of cloud technologies which are coming in and the intent to change, that's really the game, because now you have the entire recipe for super success.
That's quite a bullish note, and I like that. And I have a few more questions, so I'm going to go on those. Is that Jamil? Jamil has a question. All right. What is the maturity of data lifecycle management in the current industry, leaving behind the large enterprises where they have the people, process, technology, and the money to manage data? Gentlemen.
In fact, maybe I'll start. Beyond enterprises, I think that's where actually you have an opportunity to be much more creative. I believe, with the likes of the platforms available today and Agile being the way we work, I think, that really gives, and this entire third party ecosystem has kind of started evolving quite, dramatically over the last few years. So, I feel that, talk about SME or InsurTechs, for example, at least in our space, I can be very clear that, InsurTechs are really starting to give, the large enterprises a run for their money. And that's the way, they kind of put data to use, right from, it doesn't need, a whole lot of, underlying data to start doing, some of the inferences. The entire ecosystem, you start tapping into that and start, making propositions which are more personalized, more customized to a customer's offering. I think this is a space where, new companies, the smaller ones, really, are upping up the ante now.
Anybody else wants to chime in on this question from Jamil? Or should I take the next one? We have quite a few questions. So
Let's
I
go to the
think,
next one.
Shram, you have taken that well. So Sanjay Kumar has a question. What are the challenges on migration adopting to new tech? Vima, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I'm sure they can add a lot of value here,
Absolutely.
but one of the big challenges that when you're adopting a new technology is don't adopt that technology just because the technology looks cool. That's really never the best case to start with. It starts with a use case or an objective in mind. A, is the use case really going to fit 3 buckets: increase revenue, reduce cost, improve efficiency, or reduce risk? If it's not fitting in these buckets, it's a challenge. Because in this modern economic climate, to get a CFO approval for new tech without one of these 3 buckets is not going to happen. So understand what that use case is targeting in these buckets. And 2, do you really have the talent in your organization to manage this new piece of technology? There's a war for talent out there. And now organizations are realizing you need to do a lot more with a lot less in terms of people. So can you manage this new technology with maybe the same number of people that you have, or maybe even lesser, because now you can start federating that in your organization across multiple BUs. So some of the key, these are the top 1, 2, or 3 considerations that I would possibly give as an advice for people who are trying to adopt new piece of tech.
Dinesh, you want to?
Yes, I'll just augment by saying is that, from a business perspective, they'll always ask us value. So why are you migrating? The old way, is this a tech project or is this, what is the business benefit? So I think when you're doing migration, if you're able to articulate vis-a-vis the use case, what is the business outcome and hence the value that you can give, I think so it'll be an easier transition. And I've been, I've been part of that journey wherein I moved from one hyperledger to another hyperledger and then to Snowflake, right? So it was a tough sell, right? Because you're not leaving one cloud to go to another and then land up in Snowflake, right? So how did you do it? You did it because you realize that there is a certain amount of value you're showing that tomorrow, if for whatever reason the economy goes, in a very different way, you still want to be realized to do more with less, right? And how do you pay as you grow, right? How do you ensure that everything is needed because you really wanted to consume it? How do you ensure that you're not suddenly paying for compute and storage that you probably never utilized? And some of those benefits, if you're able to show as a value and hence show that your overall OPEX can come down because of that, migration is easier.
New tech ROI, it always is a question. You want to chime in?
No, I just want to add one more lever to what Vimal and Dinesh mentioned. So there is this technology and people that we spoke about, but another important aspect that we always need to look at is the process. So people, process, technology, all 3 coming together. Process may be not truly relevant from a data perspective, but in a broader technology migration or any kind of investment, I think it's important to rebaseline all 3. Do we have the right skills in the organization, be it in tech or in the respective functional lines, to really adopt the technology and get to the value cases that we spoke about? Are we redesigning processes for the future, or are we retrofitting the processes of as-is into a new technology and unlocking the capabilities of the new technology? I think all 3 have to be joined up conversations as we go into any technology investment.
Just to take some closing comments, because we are running short of time, but just to take some closing comments with the new landscape and with the changes that are coming, what are some of the things that enterprises can keep in mind when we're talking about data governance or data architecture, or how much to invest or where to invest? But some of your thoughts coming from your experience and your industry. If I may start with you, Ramesh.
Yeah, I think personal information security, data governance obviously are going to be pretty big, definitely in my business, but other businesses here. How do we use data in a holistic fashion, but also be able to explain it, right? Like hence the term explainable AI or whatever, right? To a governance committee is important, both from a self-ethics perspective, but also from a customer perspective. That how is my data being used? Is it being secure? Is it being kept secure? And what is the benefit I'm getting by sharing whatever I'm sharing with the company? And so this, you see, right now what's happening is you have data and then there are humans accessing it. but then we have built APIs, so there are machines, computers accessing it now. Now, how do you govern that is going to be a pretty big challenge. You know, you throw a chat GPT at something, it can go and get whatever data it wants and come out with inferences. Now, how do you prevent some of those inferences from being made or being surfaced is going to be very important here.
Sriram?
So one of the things I would say is not over-investing or over-leveraging on any one specific technology, because tech is kind of evolving at such a fast pace. I think it's important to kind of stay, invested in the spread. For example, you don't necessarily need to move every warehouse that you have, into a data lake, like you rightly said. So I think horses for courses kind of an approach. I think some of those old basics I still believe is still relevant.
All right. Dinesh.
So a lot got covered, but one of the things, like, I can just correlate with myself. So I have been to a lot of experience centers, and for whatever reason we talk about the word software or application, but have I been to a data experience center, as in, wherein people are talking about what is the next tech about data. So how do I learn, right? And how do I learn at scale? Because a lot of us manage scale, right? Yeah. So we joke, right? You have to turn a tire in a moving vehicle, right? So it's not easy to do that. So I have not been, fortunate enough to go in those forums. Like, I know, okay, Snowflake came up with something new, or some of the other hyperledger companies came up with something new. But what are those new things happening around data architecture or practices? We should see how those forums can be formed by all of us and actually drive that.
Right.
Right.
That's a great idea.
I don't know. Have we all been to like a
absolute sense?
Yeah.
So I realize that we're not talking enough innovations in data.
Yeah.
We're talking innovations on the application side or on the cloud side.
Food for thought for us. Absolutely.
Yes. Vijay.
I think for me, just to sum it up, it all starts with outcomes and it ends with outcomes. How do you use data as a super critical lever to create an organization that is curious, problem-solving mindset focused, and agile? So if you're able to get an organization to pivot to these three, then you really unlock the power of data and you have set a self-fulfilling prophecy within the organization to take it forward.
Okay. Last word.
Well, great points, right? I just want to say that any project or any big change that you do, I would try and ask 4 questions. Why do we do what we want to do? What are the outcomes we want to drive? So that really forms the basis of the business objectives.
Right.
Then you get into by when do we want to do this, the timeliness or time to value that we spoke about. And that determines how do we do it, how do we get there, the technology stack, the architecture, the entire ecosystem play, how do we get there? But I would also add a 4th question, what if we don't do this? What is the cost of not doing something? A lot of people ask about return on investment. I would encourage a lot of people to ask that 4th question, if I don't invest something, what happens if I don't do these things today? Am I going to go out of a business 5 years from now? Is my competitor who's just starting doing a lot more than me today? So that what if we don't do something is a very important question to ask as well.
A lot of times we also talk about cost of new technology. And if that technology is evolving at such breakneck speed, then how do you figure whether you want to invest in the technology right now or maybe wait, or if you're not going to adopt and adapt, then what is it going to be like? But fantastic conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but those were some great insights. And thank you for this wonderful conversation. And thank you for being a wonderful audience. And I hope we asked the right questions and you got all the answers. You were watching Forbes India Presents Reimagining Enterprises with Data, powered by Snowflake. Thank you.
Forbes India presents Reimagining Enterprises with Data Cloud, partnered with Snowflake.